All righty. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. It is great to be in a new month. In April, it is great to be in the second quarter of the year, and it is amazing to be here with y'all. It's your girl, Tech Ty, and this is the start of season 2 of Talking Tech with Ty. Just in case y'all didn't know that I had named it, I might not have told y'all, but I named it Talking Tech with Ty, and this is the Founder Series. Now, before we go any further, I hope everyone's having a wonderful day and let's get started. So, you're probably wondering who this handsome, awesome man is to my left or right, depending on where you're looking. You know me, I don't, whatever. This guy right here is Jeremy Evan Smith, and he is the founder of Full Cycle, and that is a platform that we're going to be talking about today. So, I will go ahead and properly let my guest speaker, Jeremy Evan Smith, introduce himself. Jeremy?
Cool. Appreciate you, Tech Ty. Hello, everybody. Good to be with you. My name is Jeremy Evan Smith. Like Ty said, I'm the founder of Full Cycle. Full Cycle is a modern tech trade school that teaches folks to be able to get the skills they need in order to break into tech, starting with tech recruiting. So I'm super excited to spend some time to tell you about our vision, what we're doing, and grateful to be here. So thanks for the opportunity.
Not a problem. This is great. I've never heard a founder use the term like a trade school. And I like that because on this Talking Tech with Ty series, the founder series, we're talking with founders, of course, of job training programs or e-learning programs or any program where you're helping a professional upskill and or reskill and learn
Yeah.
something new and transform their personal and professional lives. And I'm all about that. That's the only reason I get on here on LinkedIn. Love you, LinkedIn. You know how I feel about you. Because I don't need to hear the sound of my own voice. I know me, but I want to talk to people that are creating solutions to help people transform their lives personally and professionally. And that's what this is all about. But before we continue to get into Full Cycle, we also need to talk about the fact that, like, why is Jeremy Evan Smith qualified to even talk about this besides being a founder? Because he is in talent and culture at Verily Life Sciences, which is one of the Alphabet. Excuse me. I don't know why the Apple. My apologies. At Alphabet company. Yes. So, for those of you who are unaware, Google not rebranded, but what they did was a few years ago, they decided that they were not going to just be Google. They were going to expand their portfolio, and they have like a parent company that is Alphabet that has a series of other companies within the portfolio, like Google, like Verily Life Sciences, like X, and the like. So, we're going to get into Full Cycle, why Jeremy Evan Smith created this. And I just want to give you a little bit of background that he's not only the founder of Full Cycle, but he's also Mr. Talent and Culture at Verily Life Sciences. So, Jeremy Evans Smith. I just like saying that. I just like saying this. This is a good name. It's hearty.
It is, right?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into it and tell us more about Full Cycle and why did you even start it?
Yeah, of course. And as I get a chance to just share a little bit about like what Full Cycle is and why did I start it, I just want to say what's up in the chat. I see some ways.
About to get into it.
Definitely jump into the chat when y'all need to. So I know I see my friend Dre there.
Hey Dre. And I see my homie Shukri. What up, Shukri boo?
Yeah. Appreciate the first wave in there too. So good to be here with y'all. So Full Cycle. So my background is I've been in tech recruiting for several years. So I'm originally from Michigan, but I moved out to the Bay Area midway through the 2010s and got into tech. And pretty early on, I was lucky enough to get my foot in the door at Google. I got referred in, and then I worked at a couple, handful of other startups and tech companies. One thing that I kept coming across is that, similar to my own story and other people's story, when we would talk about how we got into recruiting,
Mhm.
many of us were like, I just fell into it, right? Like you never hear someone say, oh yeah, like I went to school for recruiting, or I got a degree in recruiting, or like I always wanted to be a recruiter. Like that's
Hmm.
never the story. And so as I started to think about, especially in this market today, the fact that this is a candidate driven market and we live in this great resignation and people are reconsidering where they want to find themselves, right? Recruiters
Absolutely.
actually have a huge opportunity to be able to shape that experience for the candidates and really promote and build a great brand. But no one's helping recruiters be better recruiters. So that's
Mhm.
really where full cycle comes in. Is I saw the opportunity to say like, man, we really should like create a school for this because these folks are in many cases the first person that candidates come into contact with, right? The first like
Absolutely.
advocate or member of that brand. So we're really just filling what we see as a pretty obvious need in the market that no one's really building for at this point.
Well, Jeremy, I got to say, I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. And like you've been really candid about the magic of full cycle. And I like that. I like when people
Yeah,
um add a little whimsy, recruiting should be magical. And
yeah,
why not? So what were you hoping to achieve when you first started it? So like where the origins. Here you are, you've
yeah,
been in tech recruiting for a while,
yeah,
but that doesn't mean that, you have a vision. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get from 0 to 1. It's hardest to
yeah,
get from 0 to 1. Once you get to 1, you could leapfrog to 10,
yeah,
100,000, 10x all of that. But like
yeah,
what did it really take for you to go ahead and start full cycle? And where are you? Are you in year 1? Are you in cohort 10? Where are you
yeah.
right
Yeah, yeah, great questions, Ty. So, in terms of like how we got into doing full cycle, I mean, so I was building another startup at the time, and
now?
I had
Mm,
been working on it for a couple of years, trying to build DEI software,
nice.
and yeah, it was cool. It was like I was very passionate about it. It's a
Yeah.
very, you could tell I'm about to like throw some shade at it, but it was a cool initiative. But it wasn't getting traction, right? And this is something
Mm,
that all kinds of founders face, right? You start out with an
absolutely.
idea, and in many cases, many of us start with solutions in search of a problem, right? Instead of like figuring out a problem that we want to solve or that we are coming across ourselves. So for me, I was talking to a founder friend of mine. He runs a platform called Code Signal. They do
Nice.
developer assessments, and I was just like asking him for some feedback, right? Trying to grow. And we were talking about my background, and all of a sudden the idea came around to say like, oh, like maybe you should think about educating people to become recruiters. Like nobody can seem to hire them. And the demand was growing like significantly for them. So between like 2020, June 2020 and June 2021, the demand had 7x, right? Times
Yes.
seven for
Yes.
recruiters in the industry. And the challenge was like there were no avenues to add new recruiters in there. So
Mm,
that was what really put me on the path to start to think this is a problem. And right now, no one's solving it. And that's like music to any founder's ears to try to discover something that seems to be overlooked. So that was really the story that got us there. And then it was like, once I realized it, I was like, man, I got to move fast because someone else has got to be seeing this.
yeah.
So hit up a couple friends. One of my friends, she got a couple degrees from Stanford, does curriculum development out in
Shout her
Oakland.
out. What's her name?
Yeah, so this is Trinity Thompson. She's dope. Y'all
Woo!
should definitely look for her on LinkedIn. Trinity's a real one. She's been a friend for several years and she's been an instructor, educator. She works with global brands. And so she's a great human being who really helped me to take the concepts and ideas that I knew as a recruiter,
Yes.
and then structure that into a curriculum that could actually be delivered and taught to other people. So shout out to Tigran Sloyan and Trinity Thompson, who really helped us, and also Glenn Waters, who's also now running with us on the team. So that's sort of the early story. And then we just launched this past quarter, Q1 of this year, so we're in
Woo!
cohort number 1. But we've just been like hitting the ground running, and we were oversubscribed for our first cohort. We currently have an oversubscribed waitlist for our second cohort kicking off in a couple of months. So it's been an exciting but fast paced ride so far.
I love to hear it. And I'm actually catching you at the very genesis. So this is
Yeah,
really exciting. So I have
yeah,
tons of questions for you.
yeah,
I really am happy to hear you talk about your team
yeah,
because no one, all right, everyone has ideas,
yeah,
but they're always going to be different implementations. That's why you shouldn't really worry. If you're someone in the audience that has an idea, ideas aren't unique, but
Mm,
implementations are unique. And I also have a series called Community Work, and I like hearing when people advocate for their community and people come together to do things like this, solve problems
yeah,
because that we have that diversity in thought and experiences and the like. So tell us
yeah,
a little bit more about maybe the application process for cohort one, which was oversubscribed, and now there's a waiting list for cohort two, and we'll get into that. But
yeah.
what does the curriculum look like? You don't have to give away the secret sauce. I'm all about the magic. I like the magic, you know? But,
Yeah,
like, what does this really look like, and what are
yeah,
the roles that, a fellow, I'm assuming
yeah,
that learner
yeah,
is a fellow, or if you
yeah,
tell us the name of a learner,
yeah, yeah,
what roles are they expected to get once they
yeah.
complete the program?
Absolutely, great question. So, yeah, so very much a community effort. Like I do want to say that from the beginning. Like, I might have had this concept, and like you said, ideas aren't unique. A lot of my friends have had this idea too, right? But it's the fact that I feel like my superpower, as people like to use that term, my superpower is like my community. It's the fact that like I've got some great people around me who really care about this. We have the same values, right? So,
Mhm.
so in terms of the curriculum that we developed, we knew first of all that we wanted to reverse engineer our success, right? So that's
Yes.
another term of another friend, Joshua Encarnacion. He's an amazing dude, and so what I learned from him, if there's one thing I've learned, is to reverse engineer your success, right? Start with the end in mind and work your way back. So we knew that people needed to be able to land a job on the other side. And those roles that we were beginning to see that were real needs were roles of like early tech recruiter on a team or early technical sourcer, right? Which is
Okay.
a technical term for like someone who goes out and proactively looks for talent, right? And invites them into your interview process. That's what a
Okay.
sourcer does.
Didn't know
So
that,
so
so thank you.
yeah, yeah, and that's a role that I personally love and have a ton of fun with. I mean, it's kind of like I sort of jokingly say it's like playing Where's Waldo with the hiring manager. Like they've got an idea of who they want to bring into their company, and they need someone to be able to go and literally look on the internet and try to find this human being, right? And so it's a real skill set that I think has been undervalued for a long time, and that people are beginning to wake up to see it's actually quite critical to the success of a company, especially when people are leaving their job, right? You got to find new people.
Yep.
So, and you got to find people who want to stay. So it requires a real skill set. So I wanted to take the concepts that would allow someone to be effective in those roles and basically break them down into structured curriculum. So we cover everything from, we start out by building a strong foundation of like, what's happening in the hiring market today? What's the recruitment market
Absolutely.
today? Right? It's changed dramatically since, pre 2020, and then 2020 to 2021, massive differences. And now we're coming into a whole new chapter. And that chapter looks like, what are we going to do with this office, right? Like, are we going to go remote? Are we going to go hybrid? What are people's preferences? Like, what do they
Mhm.
want to do? So recruiters, like, they need to be experts, right? And they should be looked at as experts. So we want to make sure they understand that first, and then start to apply the skills of like, what's the actual life cycle of recruiting process? You start with
Mhm.
crafting a job description, sourcing talent, aligning that search, working with your stakeholders. That's what we're focusing on this week, right? Who are the other recruiting peer stakeholders, your cross-functional stakeholders like software engineers or designers, and then really just moving, beyond that into how do you make sure your process is equitable. And then our final week, we talk about capstone concepts like diversity, equity, and inclusion, or what are
And
some of the
belonging.
premium and belonging, DIEB. So we got to make sure we get all that, an acronym and belonging, right? And thinking about things like what are the premium tools that you might be using as a recruiter, right? So there's a lot that we cover in those weeks. It is quite intensive, but I mean, the cohort that has been going through so far has been amazing, super engaged, and honestly, just I feel lucky. I mean, they're a brilliant group of human beings who like really love this stuff. So it's been cool to see them like step into their own power and build their own job descriptions they put live on our website, write reports with key recommendations for like a hiring manager and a bunch of other great things. So,
Now,
yeah,
that was awesome.
yeah.
Nicholas Robles, I see you, and I'm gonna get to you. Don't worry, all right? Stay right there.
What's good,
So
Nick?
it is a good name. I like names.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
yeah,
mentioned that this technical sourcer role, that
yeah,
these people and these skills you feel are underrepresented,
yeah,
and
yeah.
under
Underrated too. Yeah, yeah,
underrated. So,
Yeah.
maybe there's some people in our audience that
Yeah.
are in a position of job change, or,
Yeah.
they're still deciding where they want to go, who they want to be in their professional lives and the like.
Yeah.
So if you could talk
Yeah.
about transferable skills so people can see that, oh, I never thought about being a technical source. I see all of
Yeah.
these jobs all over LinkedIn. When I say
Yeah.
LinkedIn, I
What's
see
up,
these jobs
LinkedIn?
all over LinkedIn all the
Yeah.
time. I know people out here making money in tech, but
Facts.
how does that no printer, how does that resonate with me? Because I don't know what skills it takes to be in recruiting. So tell us about the
Yeah.
transfer skills.
Absolutely. So this is a great question. I really appreciate that you asked it, Ty. I think like this is spot on. And the values that we hold are the facts that people do have transferable skills, right? And becoming a recruiter. I mean, by definition, if you don't have a degree in this, nobody was officially trained to become a recruiter. So everybody has the transferable skills and
Mhm,
skills you can learn on the job, right? And so
mhm.
and I'm sure we have at least right. So we got Kristen, who's like transferable skills for when Kristen's
Wait,
in
wait,
our
wait.
cohort, right? Uh,
Did my guest just continue to go back in the chat?
Yeah,
I'm loving
yeah.
this. You want to
Kristen's
co-host? Let's
really
talk
yeah.
after.
Yeah. Cohort members for the win. Let's go. So transferable skills. I mean, recruiters really a lot of what we're doing is connecting with people, right?
Mhm.
And being able to translate a job description into search requirements, right?
Okay.
So I think when I'm thinking about the skills for where people might be coming from, they might be coming from a role that's focused on customer support or maybe customer success, or historically it's been called customer service.
Mhm.
They interact with human beings, right? They're able to have those interpersonal skills of like, I can see you, acknowledge you, understand your problem, and solve it. It's the same thing with recruiting, right? You're looking at a human being who is looking for a job or considering leaving their current company for your opportunity. And as a recruiter, you've got to have the ability to filter through and say, is this person aligned with the opportunity or not? Can I solve this problem really, right? Which is where the customer service or customer success or support piece comes in of like, someone might come to you and say like, hey, this problem is happening. You have to be able to say in those customer facing roles, like, am I the right person to solve that? Or is someone else the right person to solve that? And if they are, then you can understand like where you fit in that sort of space. Same thing with recruiting, right? Do I have the right role for the skill set that this person is bringing to the table available today? If I do, let's keep talking. If I don't, let's keep in touch, right? And there's a lot of different ways that you can sort of roll with that. So that's one example of, I think, a transferable skill set that really lends itself to this sort of role. And maybe another one might be sales, right? Someone can be coming from not just tech sales background, but they might even come from like, retail sales or
Mhm.
automotive sales, right? Like those are skill sets where you have to listen to people, understand what motivates them, right? Like, are they looking for a company that's supportive, or are they looking for a company that's like going to be working on the next future oriented product, right? Putting someone on the moon, creating like an interplanetary human species. I don't know, whatever their motivation is,
Take it
you
easy,
might
Elon.
not, that's what I'm saying, right? Like, so you don't know, right? But like some people might resonate with that and be
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, like I'm excited by this problem. As a recruiter, you're in the driver's seat helping them to be able to understand if this is the lane that they need to be in or not, right? So those are just a couple of examples. So
Listen, Kristen, you're making me laugh. All right. So the great vanilla ice, you're dating some of us. So I'm assuming that you're older millennial like me, but we'll get back to that. Thank you, Kristen, for the engagement and everyone else for the engagement in the chat. But what I've distilled from your recent answer, Jeremy,
yeah,
Evans, I just like it. Just whatever.
yes,
I know that's not the first time, but let me
yeah,
let me focus. What I have
no,
distilled is client facing skills, like you
yeah,
wanting to talk to people, wanting to be with people,
absolutely,
and that is not respective to just being an introvert or just being an extrovert. Like we're past
yep,
that. So client facing skills, communication
yeah,
skills, whether
absolutely,
it's oral, you being able to
yeah,
speak well and
yeah,
really translate what's going on, as well as written skills, translating requirements,
yeah,
prerequisites for a job posting and getting that out, being succinct and the like, as well
100%,
as I like that you mentioned the sales skills because you have to sell this organization.
yeah,
You have to sell what this is. Like if you want to go to the moon, Elon, listen,
yeah,
you know, or Mars, wherever you want to go, like to
Yeah.
find people that are also interested in that. So I did
Yep.
say that I would make sure I get to Nicholas's question. So
Yeah.
if we could take a moment to answer Nicholas's question, which is for
Absolutely.
junior recruiters, do you recommend they get started as internal or external, open close parentheses, agency recruiters? Jeremy
Love
Smith.
it. What's good, Nick? Glad you're out here on the stream. Nick's a good homie from several years back. So
Oh, so
back in
he's
our
a plant. That's what he's
yeah,
not.
no, Nick wasn't a play. I didn't know he was gonna be on the stream. So
Mess with you.
no, we used to hang out, in North Jersey and stuff like that, run around, things like that. Great guy. But great question too. So for junior recruiters, right? Like, do we want them to get in, like internal or external, right? I think you can't go wrong in either direction. There are benefits to both. So I'll talk about the external agency side and the benefits to that first, because I do feel like people throw a lot of shade on that space, right? But I'll say that was my start in recruiting, right? I worked, I had an earlier job in higher education and like admissions, which is a form of recruiting, right?
It is.
Yeah, so in that sense, it was like internal. But then, like, my first job actually was working for a staffing agency and getting placed at a big tech company like Google, right? Same thing at Facebook. So agency can be great. It shows you how to move at pace, right? It really is focused on you showing up and putting up, right? Like really being able to like do the work and invest in the process of recruiting. So it can be a real trial by fire, which can help you to understand if recruiting is what you really want to be doing. And I think that that can be important. At the same time, in balance with that, I think that internal also provides an amazing experience because, by definition, you are actually a part of the company that you're representing, right? If you're in a staffing agency, you're servicing them like a consultant, and they're your client. So there's a little bit of a like separated relationship with that. But when you're internal, like you're thinking about the culture, you're really connecting with the hiring manager because that's your colleague or other folks like that. So there are benefits to both. But I have seen a lot of the successful recruiters that I know now, they started an agency and then they went in house once they really nailed down their skill and they figured out what they wanted to do. So I would recommend that path. But if you can go internal from the jump, then more power to you.
So, what are you hoping in terms of internal or external or in-house or agency for the first cohorts of full cycle?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. So we've mainly been focusing on the internal placement side of things. So I
Okay.
think we like to build those sorts of relationships because our hypothesis as a startup was that we would have an ideal customer profile or ICP
Mhm.
of early stage startups, right? So the ones that are just about to ramp up into scale up mode. So maybe they've raised a Series B and they got product market fit. So Series B, for those in the audience, they've raised maybe 2, maybe 3 rounds of funding. Maybe they went seed round, Series A, and then Series B. By
Yes.
then they have product market fit and they are scaling like crazy and they need more money to basically go hire people to build out the company. At that point in time, most of those folks might be moving from the agency side of things,
Mhm.
where they're using a couple agencies to recruit for this company, to they need to build out their own internal talent team that knows their processes, that can get them set up for success so that they can scale well, right? And actually have processes that scale well along with the company. Because you can have a great product and a terrible hiring process, right? And that's not a good position to be in. So our hypothesis was like, that was it. And my friends are in those spaces as like founders and executives and stuff. And a lot of them would text me and be like, yo, man, how do you hire? Or like, how do you think about DEI? Or do you know any recruiters? And so that was really eye-opening for me. I was like, oh, there's clearly a problem here that's not being met. And then layered on top of it, like there's an opportunity in this problem to help these companies to define an exceptional process from the start versus getting, 250, 300, 500, 1,000 employees down the road
Mhm.
and then realizing like, oh shoot, I think we have a problem and we need to figure out how to untangle this, right? So
Yes.
so our aim had always been, because I had that experience, that informed how I was thinking about how we wanted to structure a full cycle and wanting to place our tech recruiting associates into opportunities at companies that sort of fit that bill. So yeah, so hopefully that's helpful. I mean, it's evolved a
It
little bit
is.
actually, but yeah, hopefully that's helpful. So
And we'll see where you are at the end of the year. So, that's
yeah,
great to know, especially because I'm a Web3 enthusiast, and I have a future series where I like to talk about Web3 things.
Nice. Yeah.
So I think about all of these Web3 companies that are um, looking for engineers. And the thing
Yeah.
I actually read earlier today, or maybe yesterday, it was a tweet. Love Twitter, but this is LinkedIn, so let me focus. Sorry.
LinkedIn. We like you, LinkedIn.
Hmm. I was reading that they say that there is a need for maybe like there are like 1.2 million engineers worldwide and the like, and
Yeah.
then excuse me, software engineers,
Mhm.
and about they say maybe like 18,000 engineers are currently working on, currently working at Web3 companies that
Wow.
have a market cap of this much. And
Yeah.
they were did the math on the value that Web3 company engineers are bringing in, which is like it was like maybe over 200x from what
Yeah.
the Web3 company is bringing in. So I was thinking about that, which is why I
Yeah.
had the question of like, when do you recruit? Because most of Web3
Yeah.
is seed, that
Yeah.
stage, or that the Series
Yeah.
A stage, and it could be maybe up to $20 million from what I've been seeing. It's not
Yeah.
like
Yep.
real late tens or hundreds of millions. So that
Right.
is helpful to say that, okay, we're focusing right now on our fit being from Series B, people that are, or companies that are in the scale up place,
Yep.
with their first
100%.
hire of a tech. You said what was the term you used? I believe you used tech recruiting associate.
Exactly, you got
Oh,
it.
you
Yep, Tech
oh, you
Recruiting
tech recruiting
Associates.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah, you check that on their LinkedIn, so you get a full cycle, you see, their Tech Recruiting Associates on there, right?
Mhm.
But but their next step, right? And to your point, Ty, I mean, their next step is moving into a tech recruiting role or tech recruiter role, right? Or a tech sourcer role. There are a couple other options they can go into as well, depending on their preferences. But those are mainly where we see the value add. And I think to that point, I mean, even just thinking about the Web3 piece, right? Like, so we had one of our students in the class, and he had asked, like, how does recruiting fit into Web3, right? It's in the early stage. I talked about a bunch of things of like the early adopter phase versus crossing
Yeah.
the chasm. You should Google crossing the chasm. It's an interesting graph, right, that tells you about customer adoption of your products.
Yes.
But what the point of what I was saying is, like, there are people who are in the early stage adopter, like the innovator stage, right? It was the first like 2.5% of people who have been rocking with cryptocurrency, Web3, blockchain, DeFi stuff,
Yes.
for ages, right? And they probably got a bag and a
Ages.
half off their stuff, right?
Yeah,
Like,
when we talk about ages, we're talking really around 2012 to 2017. I'm seeing
yes,
definitely a
exactly.
lot more people
Yes.
who have like, I
Yeah,
have, 7 years of experience as a
yeah,
Web3 developer. And
yeah,
like I had my first piece of crypto, and I've known
yeah,
about I've known about crypto like actively since like
yeah.
2011.
It's amazing.
So, I just want to
Yeah,
give people a bit of a timeline who are not clear on what this looks like. And when we talk
yeah,
about early adoption, we're still in a very it's
yeah,
still in an early stage, but there
yeah,
is that 2% you're talking about that,
yeah, yeah.
building, that we're gathering dust. And my mom always says,
100%.
I always
Yeah,
got something from my mom, gathering
yeah.
dust builds mountains. So those people were the ones gathering the dust,
Steve.
but
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to that point, like, I mean, and those folks, I really appreciate you saying that. Like, I've heard you said from a founder that like tech years are like dog years, right? So if they've been doing it for 7 years, times that what by seven, right? It's like 50
Yeah.
years of experience basically in dog
Yeah.
years. So if you think of it in that sense, like they that's maybe your Gemini or your Coinbase or your OpenSea or different
Crafting,
platforms like that, right?
finance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right, who've been doing this for a minute. Now, what's interesting is if you layer on the intersection of Web3 and recruiting, right?
Mhm.
How many people have been recruiting for Web3 developers, right? Or designers or folks in that space? Not many. So when this student had asked that question about it, the first person that came to mind is a guy, his name is Jesse Tensley. He's a super cool recruiting founder, runs a company called Job Mobs. And I was like, yo, Stan, who's a student, I was like, Stan, you got to talk to Jesse. And I actually just connected them today via email because Jesse was down to connect with them and talk, because there's opportunity there, right? So you could be a recruiter, you can apply these skill sets to emerging industries get
Yeah.
real, insightful and locked in on that. And that can be your opportunity. You can scale with a company as they're scaling in a new space. So lots of really interesting applications, in my opinion, is sort of the point there.
Yes, and I am a semi quasi futurist, so that is definitely
Nice.
where
Yeah.
I would be if I were interested in becoming a tech recruiter, interested in sourcing and the like. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
want to get a little bit more into your background because you're like you
Yeah.
so casually. Oh yeah, I worked at Google and blah blah blah, blah. And I'm like, bruh, come with it, bruh. But I want to get into your background, and I want to leave time for us to also talk about the founder story that you have that I feel like
Yeah.
naturally goes into this about the
Yeah.
DIB work,
Yeah.
because I think that I'm seeing more of a I'm seeing more of a confluence between
Mm.
like the growth in DEI, and I'm putting the B on it because the
Yeah.
belong is very important.
Yeah.
And I don't care how long it extends, it's very
Yeah.
important. DEIB, and recruiting because your recruiter is like the windows to an organization. The first people you see is like the concierge. So I'd like to talk
Yeah.
about, you know, um, why recruiting for you. Just because your
Yeah.
first job was at a staffing company doesn't mean that you grow in that.
Right.
What
Yeah.
resonated with you that you decided to continue on this journey, which led to
Yeah.
you to becoming a founder? That
Yeah.
is really also the essence of Founder Series.
Yeah. That's cool. I
Who
appreciate it. I
are you,
really,
Jeremy Evans Smith?
yeah, yeah. Let's tee this up, and so I think for me, like I'm just be honest. Like
I
I had
expect
been, yeah, yeah, I haven't been lying up to this point, just FYI. So I'm gonna keep it real. I was actively trying to get out of recruiting for majority of my recruiting career. I was like, yo, I don't even want to be here. Like, and it's not because recruiting is bad, it's just because I didn't find my fit. I didn't find my people, my tribe, like my vibe, whatever. Like, and personally, like I didn't feel valued when I was in recruiting, right? So I think that was the biggest thing for me. Is like part of my story was I learned a lot at Google about candidate experience, but I had a terrible experience as an employee, right? Sorry, Google.
was about to say,
Like, hey,
disclaimer.
I mean, I'm just keeping 100. Like, let me know if there's a problem, Sundar. Like, but I think like the same thing
Mr.
with
Bachai, Mr.
I,
Bachai,
I
please don't
know,
get out here with that energy.
no,
All right.
please, please at me. I'd love to have a conversation, by the way. So, but I think same thing with Facebook. I was like, I don't know, this is a thing for me. Like, it was. I enjoyed the place. I had a lot of fun stuff on the campus, but it wasn't my vibe. Like now, as I started to learn more about myself, I realized like, it's because I love startups. Like, I fit
Mm,
better in startups, like where I have less bureaucracy, more ambiguity. I get to define processes. That was important to like my happiness as an individual and like
you heard
where I
that,
felt.
Zuckerberg? You heard that,
Yeah,
Zuckerberg?
yeah. Yeah. Let
Yeah.
me know if you need some help, Zuck. So I think to that point, I was like, oh, that's the thing. So I then went and switched back to startups. And I was like, contractor number one at a recruiting agency, enjoyed that. I was employee number three as a customer success manager, not customer success manager, career services manager, same acronym, y'all. It began me. My best friend is a customer success manager. Anyway, shout out to Izana. He's moving to New York, by the way. But I do want to say that like I found my fit when I was a career services manager for this boot camp in San Francisco. I built career curriculum from scratch that helped our developers in the pilot cohort, right? 50% of the developers landed their first job in 6 weeks making six figures. Now they had come from backgrounds like teaching, academia, like sales, they were business analysts. They were not developers by trade, but I
Mhm.
realized and sort of cracked the code on how to help them to be able to feel confident about themselves and find their fit in their story, live into that. And then they were able to do all the work, right? And apply that to companies like Pinterest, Launch Darkly, right? These other amazing organizations. So for me, like I started to figure out like, oh, I like that. So let me keep running with it. And that really just like led me to and worked for a couple other startups. One of them got bought by Dropbox, another one got bought by Adobe. And eventually I was like, I like this startup thing, and I want to work on something that I feel really passionate about. So the last startup I worked for was like I thought they were really great at diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. They had a 96% approval rating of sense of belonging at the company
Nice.
for a startup in San Francisco, right? Founded by two white dudes, by the way. So I was like, I mean, it's because the people who run in people ops, like, we're black and brown folks and amazing individuals in that
Doing the
sense.
work.
And
Yeah.
we're defining the culture for everyone, right?
Yes.
And doing things that were different from just, a perspective as a white cisgender heterosexual male.
Mhm.
So having that diversity and the folks in those leadership positions, building a sense of inclusion, equity in the process,
Right.
and doing things that were different, I think really made a difference. So hopefully that's helpful in terms of like talking a little bit about my background and like why I started to walk into it. But I would say also to sort of connect it from the DEI startup piece to what we're doing today. Like
Yes.
quite honestly, like I really wanted to help a lot of organizations with DEI, and like a lot of organizations wanted to tell us how to do DEI in a way that they felt comfortable with. So I honestly like got burnt out, and I was like, I'm too involved emotionally with DEI. This is going to like frustrate me. And then I was like, my skill set's in recruiting, so let me just work on recruiting. Like, because all y'all know you need to hire recruiters, you need to hire talent. So let me
Yeah.
just let me make a difference in that space. So it really was like I stumbled upon it in a lot of ways, but that's sort of the overarching story of like how I got there as an individual and a founder. Like I didn't even want to get there. Like this is just happened, in a lot of ways.
Well, I would say that you didn't stumble, but if you did stumble, you didn't trip, you know?
I got back
And
up.
exactly. And
Yeah,
you didn't fall to begin with, but this is seeming like a really great alignment because
yeah,
from, you starting this and saying, I came from being a founder in this DEI space and
yeah,
then moved here. I feel like there's such a really great integration because
yeah,
the technical source or the recruiter, those are
yeah,
the first person you see and you
yeah,
decide, do I even want to talk with this person? Do I even want to vibe
yeah,
with them? Is this a
yeah,
place that I feel comfortable? Also, earlier today on LinkedIn, I saw someone write a simple post about it's not about culture fit. It should be
mhm,
about culture add.
yeah,
So it makes me think even more so about the role of recruiting. And recruiting, does that fit underneath HR? I would assume so, but
mm,
things are moving around right now, and I'm wondering because we do teach human resources with
yeah,
in collegiate programs and
yeah,
the like, but I could also see a program like Full Cycle kind of being in the university system. You come from admission, so you may know how to finagle this,
right,
as a certification, thinking about these things with because if it's falling under human
yeah,
resources, this would be
yeah,
a really great path for
yeah.
Gen Z, which is coming behind us because I'm an older millennial and it was declared this year that millennials are officially half of our entire workforce. So,
Sheesh. Yeah,
sheesh. You
yeah,
know,
for
you can't see me, but I've never done that before. I promise you.
oh god,
I've
yeah.
never done that
I
before.
really I really hope Gen Z are on this call right now just to see.
And they're like, cringe.
Um, oh
I've
god.
never done that
Oh,
before, but I'm trying to be everything for everyone in my audience. I'm just
oh
making it up.
gosh, I lost it. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Listen,
Oh,
this is what talking tech with
hey,
Ty is
I
about.
love it.
I am me.
I'm here for it all. That's amazing. I mean, so to come back to what you were saying, like,
Yes.
so first, an interesting point. Historically, recruiting has been under HR, right? But to your point, like things are changing. Folks are realizing that, like, if you look at an HR coordinator or HR or POPs, people ops, whatever term people want to use, look
Yeah.
at a job description versus like a recruiter's job description, right? HR is going to be focusing on things like payroll, compliance, onboarding, and maybe employee experience,
Yeah.
you know, firing people, transitions, paperwork, all that sort of stuff, right? Um,
Onboarding and offboarding.
right, yeah. And those processes and setting those things up, right? I think in comparison, if you look at a recruiter's job description, you don't see really any of that in a lot of cases. Maybe if you're the first recruiter and it's your like you're one person and you're the Swiss Army knife equivalent of doing all the things, right? But if you start to look at like a recruiter, it's like sourcing talent, finding talent, creating a hiring process, right? They're two arguably fundamentally but related skill sets. So I think modern companies are beginning to wake up to the fact that, like, oh, these are actually two different profiles, and investing in enough human beings so that you have dedicated people for both is good for the organization. So I think we're really living into, like, specifically differentiating on recruiting. But as we think about our growth, right, and where we're going, we see the opportunity to move into these other skill sets, right? What I like to call technical non-programming skill sets, right? So these technical skill sets that you need to know a little bit of code, right? Like, I studied computer science for a while, dropped out, doing fine. But, like, did those sorts of things, went to a boot camp, like, and so I understand that stuff. I write code, I enjoy it as a hobby, like, but I'm not a programmer full time. So the benefit is, like, I can speak knowledgeably when I'm on the call with an engineer, developer, right, whoever it is, and I can get by, enough and really be able to vet that. So in my mind, I'm like, more recruiters who get education like that is good for the world. It's a net positive for companies. It's a net positive for their career, helps them to differentiate themselves. Hopefully, it's a net positive for the world. So yeah, just hopefully that, like, that differentiation, like, does come through. But I do think it's like I think in the next decade, personally, it belongs to the recruiter, and that companies who understand that will really find an opportunity to get out ahead of their competition.
Thank you so much. We're coming to the end of this segment. However, I really got to highlight someone who is making me smile and laugh with their engagement in the chat. So shout out, Chris.
Hey.
And I do agree that people operations is not congruent or is not synonymous with just HR, human resources. I won't die on any hills because I'm
Yeah.
living, I'm thriving out here. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna save that for you, Kristen. But thank you so much for
Yeah.
the engagement, and
Yeah.
I'm in agreement.
Yeah.
So
Appreciate
I,
Kristen.
I
Also, what's
want to
up, Jackie?
also talk about the fact that, as I mentioned at the beginning, you
Yeah.
are currently in the first cohort and
Yeah.
there is a waiting list. Now,
Yeah.
what's next for Full Cycle? Because I do know that
Yeah.
you are interested in partnerships,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I want to talk about your partnerships, as I also put on the screen that coming up, people can go ahead and apply for the June 20th cohort at fullcycleschool.com. So I'm not a YouTuber, but almost. I'm going to launch my YouTube soon.
Hey.
And I want to say, check him out there. I love when YouTubers do that. Can you see this?
Yeah.
You want to put the hand behind. So I love that.
They
But
do.
yeah,
They plan it out. They're like, yeah,
you
they
know,
know.
click on
Yeah.
this above and you see my little
Yes.
logo
Yeah.
above.
Yeah. Yeah.
But back to you.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you
Upcoming
guys. So
partnerships. And I'm going to leave this on the screen for those people that are
yeah.
interested in sharing the information so that they can go
Yeah.
ahead and share this for with others or themselves to signing up
Yeah.
for the June 20th cohort. So please
Yeah.
share me.
Absolutely. So excited to talk a little bit about this just real quick. So partnerships are core to what we do. So the way that we've structured Full Cycle is that employers and companies are actually subsidizing the tuition for the students, right? So
Mm,
we focus on it. We're an outcomes driven, values aligned school, right? So we are actually focusing on placing people in roles where they're not only aligned in terms of the meaning and the work that they're doing, but they're happy and they're working at a modern tech company. They're finding, more stable path. So for us to that end, we're super excited that very soon we will be formally announcing an exciting partnership with a VC fund out in the Valley and Palo Alto. So that's really exciting for us, who's working with us in terms of they care about a lot of the same things that we do. Our stories really align, even personally for me as a founder, with their head of talent. And so we're excited to help people to get placed in those sorts of portfolio companies. But other partnership opportunities that are just as valuable are with leading modern HR tools, right? So we have, we're a couple conversations deep with the opportunity to work with a leading applicant tracking system that a lot of scale-up companies are using, as
nice.
well as really great outreach automation tool that a lot of scale-up companies are using, as well as I mentioned Code Signal earlier with Tigran Soyan, so their developer assessments tool.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of benefits that come from many of our tech recruiting associates as they're getting placed. They're also coming with those discounts with those tools. So we're trying to make it a bit easier for folks to be able to really grow in a lot of ways. And loving all the comments in the chat that have been popping up. So excited to keep keep running with those conversations. But yeah, partnerships are where we love to talk, because we think there's a great community out there, and we'd love to help our students really plug into that community. So
Well, Jeremy Evans Smith, thank you so very much for being here today on Talking Tech with Ty in our founder series, talking about full cycle, your journey, I don't think you're quite full cycle yet, but I look forward to continuing like that. I'm a
I do.
rapper. I'm not
Hey,
giving my rap name because I don't want y'all looking me up in my SoundCloud. That was another era, people.
definitely drop your SoundCloud in the chat.
But I want to but I want to say I really did appreciate learning about full cycle and the
Yeah,
audience learning about full cycle and where you are. I'm
yeah,
looking forward to continuing to watch the growth of this program, because it's valuable, and seeing the partnerships and seeing all of the good that it's putting out to there into the world. Because Tech Tide, that's me. Why am I talking in third person? Who do I think I am? I'm all about transforming people's lives personally and
yeah.
professionally. That's the only reason I get on here on Wednesdays and talk.
Love
Otherwise,
it.
I'd be doing something else. But I thank you for your time and for everyone who showed up and everyone that's going to watch this later. And
Yeah,
this has been great. So, on that note, everyone have a great day. Take care.
yeah.
Well, bye, Jeremy
Thank
Evans
you.
Smith.
Bye, TikTok. Good to see you, and thanks everyone.